This episode of the Dicebreaker podcast is sponsored by Rogue Heroes Ruins of Tassos, the new game from Team 17 and Heliocentric Studios. Available now on Steam and Nintendo Switch, Rogue Heroes mixes classic adventure gaming with procedurally generated dungeons and roguelike gameplay for up to 4 players through online or local multiplayer. Choose from multiple player classes and team up with friends to combat procedural dungeons, explore an expansive overworld full of secrets, rebuild your town, upgrade your character's abilities, and take down the Titans to save the once peaceful land of Tassos. For a limited time, Dicebreaker podcast listeners can get a 10% discount for Rogue Heroes on PC by visiting the Team 17 store at store.team17.com and using the code DICE10. That's DICE10. Be a Rogue Hero. Hello and welcome back to the Dicebreaker podcast. This is episode 49. I've scrolled past the number, it's 49. I'm Matt Jarvis. I'm the editor-in-chief of Dicebreaker, and I'm joined this week by 2 of the team. I'm joined by Alex Lolies. Hello, Lolies. How are you doing?
What's up, my friends? Episode 49 in bingo terms known as PC.
PC?
Yeah, I don't get it. There's no explanation. It just says capital
PC?
P, capital C, like a PC.
Oh.
I got nothing for you. I got nothing.
Yeah.
I don't get it either.
I'll see if I can find a meaning for it.
While you're looking up that, also confused and bewildered, it's Alex Meehan.
Hey, I'm almost always confused and bewildered, to be honest. That's how I go through most of my life. Yeah, every day is an adventure.
Wow.
I suppose, isn't it?
So deep.
We are here. No, you go.
No, I like to think that we can be deep sometimes and sort of speak about these important things, as well as bingo calls. I feel like Lolies might have discovered something.
Yeah, there was a very kind of knowing...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the meaning of PC49 is PC49 is taken from the popular radio show that was broadcast by the BBC from 1947 to 1953. And the name of the show was Incidents in the Career of Police Constable Archibald Berkeley Willoughby. Very long name. This call, unlike the call for 22, which is PC Parker, has evolved over time to become Copper, and later to borrow the working class comedian Jim Davidson's catchphrase, Nick Nick.
Ugh.
So that's what that is about.
What is going on?
No clue.
I'm so confused right now.
It's even worse than when we didn't know, I think. Let's go back. Let's rewind. Let's go back
in time and just... Like Back to the Future, we're just going to fade that out of...
Can we do the intros again? Please.
No.
But look, we're here now. Time moves in one direction.
Valuable time.
All we can do is move from Jim Davidson, as the world should.
Yeah.
We are here, of course, to discuss board games and tabletop RPGs and all sorts of stuff what goes on a table.
Yeah, plates.
Yeah, Gabba agreed there. That's what we're here for, folks.
Bowls, maybe a vase.
We're gonna
all the things that go on the table.
Expand out into cutlery.
What's your opinion on the spork, Matt Jarvis?
I really like it.
Yeah, it's efficient. I tell you what I loved as a
cute.
child was, sorry, Lolies, you go.
I just said it's cute. Go on.
Oh yeah. But did you ever have the spoon that was also a knife?
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a name for it like the spork. And normally you use it for like kiwis. I remember my grandma got me one once, and it's like it's a teaspoon on one end, and then the rest is it was all plastic, and it was a plastic knife, and it's for cutting the top off a kiwi and then scooping out the middle of a kiwi.
The problem with that is you're putting a knife in your mouth.
No,
I mean, you eat it with the spoon.
Yeah.
Oh, where they're on either side. Oh, yeah.
Okay. No, the SPIFE.
The SPIFE or the KNOON with the silent K, of course.
KNOON with a silent K is that's a very hard thing to describe in person to someone. Oh, can you pass me the KNOON? Sorry, the KNOON. A spork, at least, like, it's punchy, you know what it is.
Yeah.
I think SPIFE is maybe... I'm not sure about that either.
Matt, what's wrong with SPIFE? I don't see what the problem is.
I think because it puts me in mind of strife, so it just sounds... I don't know. Spork is nothing else, right? Spork doesn't sound like anything else other than both spoon and fork.
No.
It sounds like something an alien might say to you.
That could have been
Spork.
Foon, you know?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
Anyway,
Yeah.
this is
But it wasn't.
riveting.
That's what we're here for. This... Did we say deep conversation in the opening? Is that what...
This is all tabletop related stuff. Spoon and forks and sporks all go on the tabletop upon dinner time. It's still in the realm of what we talk about on this here podcast. Moving on.
All right.
Okay. Matt.
All right. Well, let's get into what we've been playing rather than what utensils do we use.
Well, the problem is, Matt, I don't know if you looked at the sheet. But there's not much to do that. So we need a lot of filler today.
Yeah, it's been a quiet week in terms of what we've been playing from the looks of things.
I'll be honest. I've been playing mostly Sea of Thieves, which is not a board game. And so
there is a tabletop RPG though, right? This is the desperate segue I'm getting in here. Yeah, I think there is a tabletop RPG of Sea of
You're
Thieves.
right, because I remember Johnny being really excited about it like 2 years, well, not 2 years ago, because I haven't been at Dicebreaker that long, but like a year and a half ago, or a year ago? A long time ago.
Time. Yeah.
It feels like a long time ago. A year feels like a long time ago.
Yeah, because I remember he got sent one, I'm pretty sure, to the office. The Sea of
Yeah,
Thieves.
but I don't remember him ever talking about it, which is why this is a surprise to me.
Yeah, I wonder if he ever played it.
Yeah, I wonder if it was a disappointment. That's why you've not heard anything.
I wish Johnny was here to let us know.
I think from what I remember of someone I used to work with having played it, I think they said it was quite convoluted. It was not Johnny.
Sorry. Too soon.
As of this recording right now, we still do work with Johnny.
I know, but this goes out on Friday, so technically it works. So.
Yes.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Yeah, grammatically that does work. Yeah.
Dramatically. We're setting it up. We're in media res right now.
Look, Matt, we live in a strange situation at the moment. We're in between timelines. we're like Matthew McConaughey in Interstellar. Spoiler alert.
For some reason my mind went to 10 Things I Hate About You, and I was like, I don't remember the time travel in that film.
I love how that's the first Matthew McConaughey film you go to.
My first is the one where he's really good in it, and he's like
just the one.
Yeah,
the one.
I don't even remember, but I remember him being really good in it. That's all I remember.
Oh well,
I think did he have HIV in it? Was that a thing?
Oh, Dallas
thinking of
Buyers
Dallas.
Club.
Yeah.
Dallas Buyers.
That was good.
Club, yeah.
I remember it being good at least.
Yeah, so what have we been playing, John?
Apparently we've just been watching Matthew McConaughey films. I think Mud is a good underrated Matthew McConaughey film.
Can I try something unrelated?
Oh.
Yes, please, fill some time.
Meehan, can you take your own hand and slowly off camera come and poke yourself in the face? And I'm gonna go like this, and it's gonna look like I'm poking you in the face.
Oh wait, from what way?
You need to do it from your right.
My right.
Yeah.
So this way.
Yeah. Okay. Ready?
Right.
Here we go. Oh wait, am I doing
This is great for the listeners.
Oh wait.
This is audio gold.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I forgot this.
Oh my eye. Oh. Lonely, stop it.
For those of you listening and are not watching the video version, that worked perfectly.
Oh yeah, it was spot on. It was flawless.
Dad, stop her. She's poking me in the eye. Stop talking about Matthew McConaughey all the time. Matt and I played Root, didn't we, Matt?
We did play Root. It looks like that's the only thing any one of us played this week. It's been a busy week. It has been a busy week.
Yeah. Granted, there was a lot of working involved, but a lot of that work had nothing to do with actually playing board games on this end. Yeah, we did our usual. Well, it's not always weekly because we shift it about. We keep it fresh, but we played our game of Root on Sunday. And, you know, I'm just going to get this out of the way now. Matt's already smirking.
I'm not smirking at all. You've made this a bigger thing than it is.
He stole the victory from me. It was a terrible experience.
Matt Jarvis.
It was.
I know. It was most
as close
uncouth.
as they come. It was as close as they come. It was your turn next, and you were literally 1 point from victory. And I got very lucky as the Irie, and managed to score, I think, 8 points in a turn, which was just, it was very lucky. It was a very close game. It was good.
Yeah, it as a lot of fruit games do go, towards the end, people started ganging up on whoever was getting the most points, i.e. me. And, you know, I just felt like there was a lot of vitriol going around towards, you know, I was just doing what the Alliance do. Granted, I hate myself for it, because I also hate the Alliance. But I knew I should have tried to get that last point, but I don't know, I was sitting there very confident in myself. You know, everyone else was saying, oh, I'm just going to do this because I don't think I'm going to be able to win. I was preparing to hold up that trophy, and look who comes along, taking advantage of the fact that everyone else has been ignoring him, rolls up, and gets 8 points in one turn and beats me.
It was, it took all three of us, so we were playing with all 4 factions, it took all 3 of us, essentially, to stop your momentum, because you were steaming away with it at one point.
Yeah, I was steaming. I would describe that as steaming.
But Root is very much the kind of game where everyone as soon as you get enough points ahead to look like you're in with a shot, everyone just piles on you. And particularly as the Alliance, because the Alliance can very quickly, in the later rounds, rack up a lot of points. Everyone just immediately starts taking out all the sympathy tokens they can.
The Alliance in our group has acquired a reputation of being the one you need to worry about. Because if they get into the right position, then they're just on their way. And it's very hard to get rid of them. It's very hard to push them to a point where it's going to take a while for them to recover again. Whereas I'd say the other factions, you know, it's potentially easier to kind of just make things very difficult for them. But you have the counterbalance of the fact that the Woodland Alliance take a long time to kind of get into a position that, you know, they're racking up points and they're becoming a real issue. But no, I enjoy playing as them. They are really fascinating to kind of get your head around and, you know, like figure out, what's the best way of, where's the best place to put my bases, where's the best place to put sympathy, you know, how can I fly under the radar, which is often very difficult in our group because, like I said, we don't like the Woodland Alliance, except when you're playing as the Woodland Alliance. Whereas everyone else, we're like, they're fine. Like, it was good. No, I still really enjoy playing that game.
Yeah, it's
Even
good.
if I lost.
am patiently waiting for them to add the other factions to the app, because that feels like the next step now, is relearning a load of other kind of dynamics and how they interact.
Yeah,
Just
I'm
want
eager
the
for it.
lizards. I really want those lizards.
I'm a little tangent related to Root. Yesterday, which by this point won't be yesterday when you're listening and watching to this, but you know that. The Later Games, who make Root, but also are involved in the Root RPG that's coming out this year.
Yeah, I think it's due out in the summer sometime.
Yeah, Magpie Games, which we played, very fun. They released a bit of art yesterday that I just couldn't stop looking at. Yeah, and I sent it to the others in our Slack group, and it's just this picture of this poor Mr. Frog. He's just a frog, and he just looks like he's wandered into the wrong part of the neighborhood, because there are these like a gang of lizards around him, like being incredibly threatening. I think they have daggers or swords of some sort, and he's holding 2 swords. But he doesn't know, like, what to do with them, or he's in trouble, everyone. I worry about Mr. Frog, and he's got this expression in his face like, oh, I'm in danger. Couldn't stop looking at it. I loved it. Yeah, I both felt love for Mr. Frog and feared for him at the same time. That's the power of art, I think.
That's the power of art.
Yeah.
That sounds like
I
an
care for this
80s
frog.
pop song. Or like not even a power ballad song, more like.
Yeah. I care deeply for this fictional frog.
That's the power
There you go.
of art.
Yeah.
I can't remember if the frogs and the lizards. I don't think they were in the Root RPG that we played. We played the test version.
Yeah. I don't think. I thought you could be whatever animal you wanted. I didn't think the animals really mattered.
I think
it
you
was
can
more-
because everyone's vagabonds, right? That's the...
Yeah, everyone is a vagabond. You're not like you are all vagabonds. You're not like Wooden Alliance or like the Marquise the Cat. But I think you can be any animal you want. Because I'm pretty sure I played as what was I? Some sort of beast. I don't think it was an opossum. I think someone else was an opossum. Anyway. There you go. Watch our Root RPG playthrough.
Yeah, it was really good fun. I really enjoyed that. I'd
it was
be
good.
interested in going back to it at some point.
Yeah. Lolies.
What's up?
Have you been playing anything? What's up?
I realised that I played one game of Star Realms and I won
Right.
it, and it wasn't really much to talk about. But yeah, other than that, I literally played just Sea of Thieves and nothing else, I don't think. Just one game of Star Realms.
Does Sea of Thieves have any
Board games in
like
it.
games in the world?
Yeah, no, I was
It feels like that should be ripe.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there is. I haven't come across any. I've mostly just been finding treasure and killing skellies. It's mostly what I've been up to.
Well,
also somebody
it sounds like someone should put a warrant out because, frankly, behavior killing all those skeletons.
so we were playing last night, and we had this treasure that we just found like on our shipwreck, and we had this treasure on our ship, but we didn't realize that this treasure is like worth 10k, and it puts a marker on you, so like other pirates can see where you are as long as you're carrying this treasure. So we weren't aware of this, so we were just like going about our business, just like getting more treasure. And next thing, like the ship came out of nowhere and just like destroyed us, like killed us and took our treasure, and it was like, okay. So then we respawned, and because they were carrying it, we were able to hunt them down. And like, but there was only a crew of 2 of us, and they had like a crew of 4, and we're quite new to the game, and they seemed like they were pretty good at it. And like, we knew we were gonna lose, but we were like, man, we're still gonna set their boat on fire at least. So we did that.
It's the principle.
It was the
It's
principle. So we chased. We did. I think we respawned twice, and both times we went and chased them down and like threw fire at their ship because we were just annoyed because it was like, why are you being so mean? And then we got bored of it and stopped. But as in we stopped chasing them down. We just played the game. But
one epic ending.
it was just
Sorry.
like really fun just to take our revenge on these people who were being mean. Like, because we had an incident a night or 2 ago where we played, and we were going back to a port, and we just brought back everything to sell. And there was another ship there, and the other pirates were there, and they were like, oh, we come in peace, like, we're really friendly. And we were like, okay, great. And we were like playing music together, and they had loads of treasure, loads, like so much. And we were just having a fun time, just like playing music for ages. And then I was like, let's go to the tavern. So we all went to the tavern, and we were again playing music and having drinks. And one of them was playing music, and he was standing in the door. And after a while, I was like, do you think he's standing in the door? Because we can't get out as long as he stood in the door. I was like, do you think he stood in the door because they're robbing our ship right now? And my friend was like, yes, I think so. And without discussing it, he just started stabbing this guy. And I was like, hey, man, you can't just attack them without discussing it first. So, of course, they ended up killing us all. And I was like, we don't even have anything on the ship. We'd taken everything to sell already. So there was nothing valuable on the ship that they could possibly take. Like, why would we attack them?
This trust, it sows, it sows discord.
It was really sad because we were having the nicest time, and then when we respawned, they murdered us again straight away, and I was like, oh, okay.
That seems a bit harsh.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, you've done it once.
Apparently they were robbing us though. Apparently there was
okay.
something. Yeah. Like we weren't wrong. Because we got some kind of like what do you call it when you get something like an achievement, which was like you've been robbed or whatever, and we were like, oh, okay, so we weren't wrong.
Well, I wanted to take away from that story. Maybe you should be more trusting, but actually,
No, it
turns out
that's the thing. I was really annoyed at my friend because I was like, why did you attack him without discussing it? There's 2 other people in your crew, and we've been murdered because you just attacked them. And then it turned out we did get murdered, so it was like, okay, this. I just don't want to be those people, right? I don't want to be those people who always attack everyone we come across in the game.
You want to think the best of people.
You do.
But, I think what we've learnt from this, kids,
stick
is
to board games.
If you think somebody is robbing your ship, they probably are, so get stabbing.
I like mine better.
This is not an advice podcast for a good reason. All right, shall we move on to some news?
Yeah.
I never said it was good advice.
Let's kick off with this one. Just an interesting little one that Chase covered last week. The One Ring, or the second edition of the One Ring, the Lord of the Rings RPG, is now the highest funded tabletop RPG on Kickstarter.
Oh, wow.
It's a little bit of clarification. So it's not the highest funded RPG campaign to do with tabletop RPGs ever. There have been a couple of supplements for D&D 5e that made a little bit more money. But in terms of being a standalone game, it is now the highest funded, having raised, so in Swedish krona, 17 million, which comes out to about £1.5 million pounds, which
nice.
it's a lot of money, but it's also, for Kickstarter, it's not loads of money in the context of what board games tend to make. I think Frosthaven made 12 million, something like that.
13, I think it was.
Which obviously is an anomaly by itself, because that's now the biggest board game Kickstarter of all time. But it kind of shows the gap between. But also, you're working on, RPGs are a book, whereas Frosthaven is a box full of plastic and cardboard, and so the costs are higher across the board.
Yeah, I also think, like, when it comes to RPGs, like, we've already seen, like, how popular D&D is compared to every single other, like, role-playing game out there. Like, whereas board games, obviously there are board games that people particularly like, but I'd say the audience is a bit more spread out between different, series and types of board games, whereas with RPGs, it is very much D&D and then everything else.
Yeah.
So the fact that they've made this much money is still kind of impressive.
Yeah, of course. So for a slightly different comparison, so looking at it, the One Ring had about 16,500 backers, and I think Frosthaven had over 80,000.
Yeah.
So again, that's kind of the difference you're looking at there in terms of magnitudes. But to be honest, I'm surprised that it's a second edition of a Lord of the Rings role-playing game that's managed to make all this money. Because you would think that maybe Lord of the Rings it's popular, it's well known, but it is kind of just, it's fantasy. It's not a million miles away from D&D.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously Lord of the Rings is still really popular, but it's not the most relevant property out there either. Like, it's been a good few years since the film came out, and obviously there are people who are into the books, and I believe there's a Amazon series coming out at some point, which should be interesting. But yeah, it's not like a brand that's really endured, like, because obviously it's not had anything new since the Hobbit films, and people's reaction to those are mixed anyway. But I think it's possibly because it already had an existing fan base. I think it was quite well loved when the first edition came out, and I imagine there were a lot of people who were passionate about that, who were excited to be able to play the second edition, after it went through cancellation and potentially, maybe wouldn't have existed if not for this. And who's the publisher again? Free League.
It's Free League, yeah. So they obviously
Yeah.
have a track record of making a lot of money for these kind of projects anyway,
Yeah.
from Tales of the Loop and so on. So
Yeah, and they've dealt with branded RPGs really well before, like with Alien. So, obviously some of the people who are aware of Free League might, have seen that and gone, oh, yeah, I think this is something I can bet on. So I'm not massively surprised that it's done well. I think the surprise is mostly that it's done this well, because, like we said, most RPGs that aren't D&D don't tend to make this much money. I mean, I know... Oh, now help me out here, Matt Jarvis. What's the Norse-themed role-playing game that's quite popular? I believe we covered a book on it the other day.
Mark
The
is it?
Elven.
No. Am I thinking of something else?
No, it's the one I think there's a board game based on it as well.
Trudvang Chronicles or Trudvang Legends.
Yeah. Trudvang Chronicles. I think that's another one that's quite popular. Like, again, outside of D&D, but yeah, it's good to see other systems kind of getting their day in the sun, as it were. And although, like we've spoken in the past, we would generally prefer, at least I would generally prefer, RPGs from larger publishers like Free League. I would prefer them to kind of not go through Kickstarter, because I feel like that's a more appropriate platform for smaller designers, like with ZineQuest, or ZineQuest, as it's appropriately called, was. But hey, people wanted to back it, so nobody forced their hand.
Yeah, I wonder if with smaller RPGs as well, because it's that much easier to get, people can pick up a digital version. So platforms like Itch are generally more popular because you can just put out a PDF. You don't need to worry about shipping and distribution until you've kind of proven that there's an audience for it anyway. Which for a lot of those smaller RPGs, there might not be to the degree that you suddenly want to print several thousand books and try and deal with all that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't tend to go to the print versions of those smaller RPGs simply because the shipping is often an issue, because they usually come from the US, and so you end up, paying out a lot for shipping, which is just the reality of it. So being able to get like a digital version of those is pretty great, and itch.io is really good, particularly for smaller RPGs. But like sometimes smaller publishers like self-publish stuff, it's good to have that funding up front if they need it, because they're not rolling in money most of the time. They're doing this because it's a passion project and they hope that people will be up for funding them. So, but yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but I'm looking forward to the One Ring second edition. I think it's called the One Ring Role Playing in Middle Earth. It's got like a longer title, but it's the One Ring. But yeah, I'm intrigued. I actually own the first edition. I've never really played it properly. I've kind of flicked through here and there. But I think it's always been that thing of, for fantasy, there have always been other games that have covered that. I've never necessarily felt like I need to play another fantasy RPG.
Yeah, and it's the case that obviously like Tolkien is a huge influence for pretty much every bit of fantasy, media, let's call it, out there. Like, it's gonna be either, if you're looking that far back, it's gonna be either Tolkien or something really far back, like Old English sort of stories, like Gawain. Although Gawain isn't so much Old English. Do you see, this is why we need Johnny here now, because he'd be able to tell you.
He's gone, man. He's gone.
Who is going to correct me in my Old English stories now? No. Yeah. Like, I did see they're hopefully doing something, the One Ring second edition, to do with the orcs and kind of making them playable. Is that a thing in the new edition?
I can't remember, to be honest.
Yeah. That's the one big qualm.
When was the first edition released? How old was the first edition?
I think like 2011.
Oh, okay. It's not that old.
Yeah, and then this second edition was in the works for a long time from Cubicle 7, which was the original publisher, till it was cancelled a few years ago, and then Free League picked it up. But from what I understand, this version rolls in quite a bit of the work that Cubicle 7 had already done. So, like you say, I think it kind of lives on in a new form. It was more of I think it was a licensing fallout between the estate holders or license holders for Middle Earth and Tolkien's work and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, like, obviously, Tolkien's work has its place and everything, but I don't know, like, I do enjoy the films very much. I've attempted to read the books, but the writing style doesn't really gel very well with me. And like my big thing with it is, the way that the, races like the orcs and what are they called? Like the wild people or something.
Oh yeah, the wild men of Dunheim, I think.
Yeah, like that doesn't do it for me so much. So it would be interesting to see a different take on that. If the second edition does do that. But hey, there you go. Those are my thoughts.
All right, let's move on to this next one. Alex, Meehan, tell us about Vivid, the next game from the folks behind Sagrada.
This looks amazing, by the way.
The Floodgate Games who they publish Sagrada, which is a really good dice rolling game, have announced this new game called Vivid. The gameplay details are a little vague, but from what I could gather, it seems to be a game about kind of connecting a series of memories together of your childhood, and then like using those to kind of develop, who am I going to be when I grow up. So I think the big draw of it seems to be the artwork. Again, the only artwork I've seen is the front cover, which is really good. But if the art is like if the rest of the art is like that, then we're in a good place, because that front cover looks really great. You can see that on the news piece that's on the website. I think you use cards to you place cards in like these memories in different locations. And there seems to be a lot of engine building involved in it. It would be interesting to kind of learn more about how it works, because the concept of it sounds really interesting. I like Sagrada.
I've not played Sagrada. It was one of those games that I really wanted to, but I had people who were like, if you've they were comparing it to Azul, one of the Azul versions maybe, and they were like, that one's better. So I never got around to playing it. But I've really wanted to, because it looks beautiful, obviously, and just looks like a kind of game I would enjoy.
Yeah, it's really good. I think like it shares the theme with Stained Glass of Sintra, but at least for me, I found them different. But
yeah, I've not played Stained Glass of Sintra, so like I wouldn't be able to comment on the comparison made between those two. But Sagrada's good. It's there's a lot more of a random element to it. And I'd say the drafting matters a lot more than in Azul. But I really enjoy Sagrada. I thought people weren't, as a whole, hugely hot on Stained Glass of Sintra.
Yeah, which is weird, because thinking about it, like I bought Stained Glass of Sintra, and then I think I might have played it once, maybe, I don't even remember. And I remember it just not being very popular as well. So I don't know. I don't remember who said this to me or why they said it to me, but maybe I'd already bought the one and they were like, if we have it already, don't bother with the other one or something. I don't really know. But
yeah. Well, but I'd say both I and Matt and I would recommend Sagrada. It is good.
Yeah, I think there's an app of it as well, which I haven't played.
Really?
But
Okay.
if anyone is kind of looking to
try that.
to play at the moment.
But Vivid was created by Matthew Dunstan, who seems to have done a lot of work on escape room games. They've worked on that adventure games series. This might be another instance of me getting this wrong, but I believe Phil Walker-Harding worked on those.
Yeah, I think it is Matthew Dunstan and Phil Walker-Harding. This is with Brett Gilbert as well, right? Brett J. Gilbert. Vivid? Because I think they tend to work as a pair.
It says
from
so
some
in the
together.
article.
You're right. Yep, it is Brett J. Gilbert. Yep.
I'm trying to think. They do Elysium. I think that's like the game I associate with them most strongly. But that was quite a few years ago, so I'm sure they've done things since.
Yeah, and Elysium seems like a very different game from this Vivid. So there's no release date for the game yet. So I imagine there'll be more details coming out for it, and then there will be a release date announced. So there you go.
Mm-hmm. Have either of you played Bosk as well, which is I think the only other Floodgate game I can name. Floodgate Games game I can name.
What is it? Busk.
Bosk, B-O-S-K.
Doesn't ring a bell.
That's a no from me.
It was kind of like, I think it came out not so long after Photosynthesis, and it had a similar theme of kind of trees. But it was really interesting. It was it's been a little while since I played it, so I might get some details wrong, but it's basically a gridded board, and you put down leaves as if they're falling off your trees in squares to try and cover as much ground as possible, but your opponents can cover your leaves with their own leaves, so it's like whichever one's on the top, I think is the only one that counts. But it goes through different seasons where I think the scoring objectives change, so you're trying
like
to...
Wingspan.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it as
so...
well. It's kind of got a look of like photosynthesis about it with the trees and everything as well. It looks really pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good game.
Does sound like it shares a few mechanics with photosynthesis as well, particularly with like, how do you place your thing? Like, how do your opponents interact with that and kind of try to screw you over? So, interesting.
What does Bosk mean? I wonder.
I don't know, actually. I guess I've never really thought about it. Yeah, Floodgate seemed to have a pretty good run so far.
Bosk is a small wooded area. That makes sense.
That does indeed.
All right, but did you say we have a date for when this is coming out, or?
Nope. There are no details to when it's coming out, how much it's going to cost.
All right. Well, at some point in the future, we may enjoy that.
It looks like a lot of the games are around £40, so maybe around that.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
That's Lolies' guess.
You got it here first.
Get your bids in. Get your bids.
All right, let's move on to these Unmatched expansions, I missed this contest when it originally happened. So this kind of came out of nowhere very recently, I think today, which is a couple of days ago as of this podcast going up.
Yeah.
But Alex Meehan, you wrote this story. Please tell us.
I'm in the shopper. William Shakespeare's down there. Oh my goodness, is that Rosie
He's massively
the Riveter?
confused by the existence of helicopters.
You're gonna have to get up to date, okay? Well, I'm not gonna explain everything to you. I'm not gonna explain the chopper. We're here to talk about Unmatched, okay? So just deal with it. That's what I'm saying. I'm shouting out the window at William Shakespeare.
God. Poor guy.
Big fan of Macbeth, gotta say.
Really?
Yeah.
That's probably my least
favorite.
favorite. That's not my least favorite. It's one of my least favorite. I think because I studied it for school, I'm kind of like about it.
And what's the problem with that?
It's just like
you get to read it more.
I just read it over and over and over, and I've seen it at least. I don't know. I've seen it so many times. It's good. It's a good one. I don't hate it. It's just that
you said it was one of your least favorite.
I mean, because Shakespeare's got a lot of good stuff. Like Two Gentlemen of Verona is great. There's plenty that I haven't even read yet.
Same these. Yeah. It's even Macbeth or Twelfth Night. Big fan of Twelfth Night.
That's one that I've been meaning to read, actually. That's what I was thinking in my head.
My wife's favourite is Twelfth Night.
Yeah. People underestimate Shakespeare's comedies. I think they're pretty good. Yeah, there you go. But this is
I think Shakespeare is
underestimated.
underrated. Yeah, Shakespeare is massively underrated.
I mean, compared to his other works, everyone goes on about his tragedies and his histories, which, are great. But, I think his comedies are
I think they're great.
Overlooked.
I think they're hilarious. Yeah, he's got a whole thing about sheep in Two Gentlemen of Verona, and it, cracks me up every time I read it. There you go.
Well, this isn't a Shakespeare podcast.
It should be. It bloody
It
well
should-
should be.
It is now. Look, we don't get these opportunities often enough. Let's get into
What,
it.
to be nerds about William
Yeah.
Shakespeare?
Look at
Well,
this.
I really, if you want turning around on Macbeth, watch Throne of Blood. Throne of Blood is maybe the
Throne of
best
Blood.
Macbeth.
Look at this, right?
It's
I bought
Yeah, I
this.
got one of
Yeah.
them.
I bought this
I got
when
that
I
big
was
honking
like
thing.
no, I bought this when I was 14. I dated the day I got it. That's how much of a nerd I am. For those of you listening, it's like a complete works of William Shakespeare.
Yeah,
it's
it's
massive.
enormous. You can buy those pretty easily, to be honest. There's about
Yeah.
10 different versions of them.
Yeah.
I got mine
And
secondhand,
it's
which is like great.
Yeah, it's literally like the complete works. You could kill a person with that.
Yeah,
thing.
it's got like
When
all
my
his
wife and I-
sonnets and poems and everything in it as well.
Mm.
when my wife and I moved in together. It was one of the very few books where we doubled up.
No way!
It's
Yeah.
Just double Shakespeare.
Oh, amazing. I love
It
it.
was that,
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings, and maybe something else, but we don't cross over often.
Oh, that's so sweet. I love that. That's really cute. I need to find me somebody who has a complete works of William Shakespeare, I guess.
That should be the first question.
That should be the first question.
What's your favourite Shakespeare? Also,
Yeah.
how many do you own? How many have you read?
Yeah. Yeah, what's your favourite Shakespeare and why is it Macbeth? I will say Macbeth is one of the worst, like, in terms of plays I've ever seen. Like, there was this one version of Macbeth we went to see. Again, we studied it at school. And it was so embarrassing because, like, Macbeth is one of those ones that can be really good if people know how to deal with it. But if they just go straight up for a full translation and don't try and play with it a bit, it can be so embarrassing because the witches and all the supernatural elements just feel they don't fit in a modern day audience because you're not, people were supposed to be scared by the witches and all the supernatural stuff, but obviously now a modern day audience wouldn't be. We kind of had to not laugh just to not be impolite. But then I saw a really good version of Macbeth at the Globe, so it's very much one of those ones that depends on how you do it. But there's no Macbeth in this board game.
There should be. I mean, Macbeth would make a good unmatched character, I think.
He
Or
would,
Lady
yeah.
Macbeth, probably.
Or Lady Macbeth, yeah.
So pray
But,
tell,
yeah,
how does Unmatched work?
Ooh, pray tell to thee. Unmatched is a really interesting series. We've covered it in the past quite a few times because, new expansions for it come out. It's called a game system, which I don't like because it complicates things, but it just basically means that they can release a load of expansions for it, which add new characters. So Unmatched is this, they call it a skirmish game, but you play as different fictional and historical characters, presumably that they can get the licenses to, and you sort of go up against one another in a 2 to 4 player match off, and you control your characters using a deck of cards, which I've not played it. I would like to, because the cards, the decks seem to be really built around not just what the individual kind of characters' mechanics, because it has asymmetrical elements and the fact that different characters can have different abilities, but the decks themselves are kind of themed around what the characters are known for. So I think Alice, who was included in the first release, has like her Vorpal blade and can kind of grow and shrink in size and things, which is kind of cool. But there's this new release that's going to come out that was created by people kind of from the Unmatched community, because there was a contest which I also missed, but the winners were announced by Restoration Games today, and so 4 of the characters / decks have been selected. Those 4 were the Genie of the Lamp, Harry Houdini, the Magician, William Shakespeare, and Rosie the Riveter. But apparently there were so many good submissions that there will be 8 additional decks being released in the near future based on the various submissions, put out by people, including one of the designers of the winners, Chet Dudick, and Charles Peters will be designing, 2 of the upcoming decks. So the first set released will be Houdini versus the Genie, whereas Shakespeare and Rosie the Riveter will be included in kind of future releases. So yeah, it's exciting. It's cool that they're kind of reaching out to the community and getting, encouraging them to send submissions, and just it seems like the creators are quite deeply involved in the design process as well. From what the press release said, apparently there's some sort of discord.
Did the press release say anything about whether they will see royalties, or
no,
see if they've developed these to some degree? Hopefully that will be the case.
I would think so.
You'd hope so.
I think it would be really shifty that you've named the winners and you're saying, they're involved in the development and the design process, and then you don't give them any money for the idea. Feels. I think
Restoration Games generally is good with that stuff.
It sounds like they're literally hiring these people as designers. Like, they've not just come up with, wouldn't it be cool if Houdini was one of the characters? It sounds like they've submitted a design for the deck, which kind of feels like there could potentially be grounds for, hey, I created that. Unless they literally signed away, like, the rights to their design, then I would think they would have grounds to get payment for it. You'd hope they get paid for it.
Like you say, it sounds like they're involved in the development. They've kind of been upfront about the fact they're not just saying thanks for the idea and then running off of it. So this isn't this is not to cast any dispersions on Restoration Games, who I think, like I say, are generally stand-up folks. But I will say Genie versus Houdini is a very phonically pleasing title.
Yeah, and it makes thematic sense, and so they're both sort of magically related.
Can you match anyone up against anyone? Because I just spotted that they released some standalone features, including Velociraptors from Jurassic Park. Can you imagine setting that up against like Sherlock Holmes or William Shakespeare? I love that idea.
Yeah, as long as I think all of the decks are built to work against one another. I think obviously some are packaged in with others. I think they kind of try to make them thematically appropriate, like is it fogs? Isn't there a fog one?
Cobblestone and fog.
And
fog and cobblestone, something like that.
Has Sherlock Holmes, Dracula, Jekyll and Hyde, and another one that I can't remember.
The Invisible Man, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's the Invisible Man. So they're all kind of fictional, like London-ish style characters that fit against one another. But theoretically, you can match any of the characters and decks against one another. I think Matt Thrower in the review was quite positive of the... Yeah. They played quite a few of the different decks, didn't they? They didn't just play
I think that was one of the things that Matt praised most, is the fact that it's basically like you're getting two action figures and kind of slamming them against each other in some ways. Because it's just pure pop culture mashup. Because there's a Buffy pack, I think.
Yeah, there's a Buffy one.
So I think there's Bruce Lee in there somewhere. So there's like real life people as well as kind of these, like you say, mythological. And so you could have Bruce Lee versus the Medusa, or you can have King Arthur against Buffy. And it seems like they're having a lot of fun with it, which is exactly what it needs. But it also sounds like it's a good game in and of itself. So
I think the deck element is the thing that really draws me to it, because I think if it was more a skirmish game in the style of you roll dice and then you have to use these calculations to kind of figure out who does what, I'd be less into it. But because it uses a deck of cards, I'm much more intrigued by the idea, especially because I think the thing that seems to work for it, from what I've seen from the pictures, is that even though obviously you have these vastly different characters, it uses a similar art style that kind of brings all the different universes and characters together to thematically fit. Like, it doesn't look like... You haven't got the Jurassic Park logos and art style of that film next to King Arthur. Like, they try and make them, like, seem to fit in the same game, which I think seems to make a big difference. But, yeah, no, I would like to play it. So, there's no details as to when the next, like, lot of releases based on these contest winners is going to come out. But apparently there will be information regarding it released soon.
All right.
And there is no release date for this Houdini versus Genie yet. So, but it's going to be the first one of that lot to come out.
I would guess that they, even if they have the decks, I think they all include miniatures. So I guess they need to do some sculpting and.
Yeah. But... There's no artwork for the upcoming releases or anything like that released yet. I think they've literally just announced the winners. So,
cool.
At least they have yet to announce the runners-up. So those 8 additional decks that they're going to bring out. But I believe they will do in the near future. All
right. Cool. Move on to this next one, which was written up by Chase and was pointed out by Wheels as well. Wheels sent this to me, which is A Mending is the name of this. And it's a storytelling game that's part of this kind of newish genre called keepsake games, which generally involve kind of like crafting something that you keep. So I think they're kind of like a sibling or kind of like an adjacent kind of subgenre of journaling games where you make a diary and then keep that. But A Mending is from Xing Yin Core. It's up on Kickstarter. I will check whether it's still, I think it runs through March 25th, so it will still be on Kickstarter by the time this podcast goes up. But the really interesting thing about A Mending is that it involves sewing. So it's a game in which the kind of premise is that you get a call from an old friend and you are making your way to their house, but it's not the kind of most straightforward or easy to traverse path. So the game kind of revolves around you literally sewing a map to your friend as part of the gameplay. And that kind of sets the stage for exploring your relationship with them and kind of developing your kind of character's background and narrative and so on. It's worth saying that although I think it includes a little guide on how to sew, so if you haven't sewed before, it will kind of run you through the basics. You're not going to suddenly be needing to crochet an entire kind of tapestry or anything like that. It seems relatively quite straightforward, but there is also an option for a pen and paper version where you just draw with pen rather than sewing. So you don't have to sew if you don't want to or are unable to. But yeah, it's just I picked this out because it was just a really interesting kind of smaller game, but it just kind of demonstrates the creativity that we're seeing, particularly with storytelling games as of late. And it's not something I've seen a game do before with literal sewing involved. There's obviously Patchwork, which is abstracted sewing, put these tiles on a board, but doesn't actually have you grasping needle and thread. So yeah, and I think it's really, as with a lot of these games, it is quite it's relatively cheap. So the digital versions are $18 or £11, so $25 or $15. And then there's a version that comes with like a carrying case, if you have thread and needle to store, which is a little bit more. But for
I was just looking
kind of
at
an interesting game.
Yeah, it looks stunning. Like because I'm assuming it's kind of like an RPG, right? But like a solo RPG. And I've always been a bit scared of them, I guess. I've always kind of stayed away from them a little bit. But this, I was just looking because I was like, I want to pledge the one where you get everything, where you get literally like the thread and because you can back it where there's like a paper version, or there's one where you get the cloth version, which you can then like wear as a scarf or a bandana afterwards and stuff. Just really like she's got pictures of like somebody wearing it, and It's stunning, and like that version is like £100, but it's completely backed up. Like they had 100 slots for that, and it's already like sold out. And I'm like, no, that's the one I want. So like I could get like a paper version, but I don't know if I want that one. So anyway, I'm like really excited about this. Like I have never been as excited about an RPG, I think, or like a solo RPG specifically, I guess, as I am about this. This is great. This is like right up my street. And it feels like this is kind of like in my comfort level as well, to some extent.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool idea. I love it when board games and RPGs kind of take advantage of the physicality of, you know, the medium, in terms of they're playing around with the fact that this is a physical thing that you can interact with and own. And like I had some friends who they'd played Pandemic Legacy Season 1, and they had like attached all the different cards that they had used, like their character cards, and like the aspects of the game that they had done to kind of make it their sort of experience individually, and they had put it in like a framed like photo frame, and hung it on their wall. And I think that's so awesome to kind of be able to do that, like to physically display your kind of gameplay experience. And I feel like this is what this is doing, but you're, you know, deliberately supposed to do that. As for sewing, I'm monumentally awful at it. I am just so impatient, and I make mess on the back, you know, at the back with all the thread, just gets stuck all the time. So impatient. But I've been recently trying to get better at it, because I want to have a sense of I can repair my own stuff. I don't need to go to my mum and ask her to do it like I'm, you know, 16 years old or whatever. You know, I can repair my own socks. Domestic goddess. But yeah, no, it sounds interesting. Sewing's not really something I would do for like a hobby as a relaxing thing, but maybe that could change. Maybe I just need to, you know, chill out.
I think that's one of the nice things about games like this, is that it almost gives you that incentive of it's kind of similar to the journaling thing. It's like some people find it hard to keep a diary and write about kind of their own day to day, but want to keep a diary or be in the practice of writing something each day. So it's just that little kind of bit of inspiration, or just the kind of framing of it, in terms of like, okay, you're doing something you might do as a hobby anyway, but here's that little bit of incentive. It's like it's a narrative, or it's kind of like a character, which is it's cool. I'll give a shout out for Gion Shim as well, who made Field Guide to Memory, which I think we spoke about in the podcast before, and also The Last Will and Testament of Gideon Blythe, which is a heck of a name for a game, which is also up, and I think you might be able to grab the last few hours as of this podcast going up on the Kickstarter for Gideon Blythe, but is also kind of one of the proponents of this keepsake genre, where you are creating kind of keepsakes to have and kind of cherish after you're done with the game. So you know, I'm interested to see what more, or what comes next after sewing.
Cooking and baking.
I thought you said drinking, and I was like, whoa, drinking.
There was a cooking-based RPG a few years ago. I can't remember the name of it.
I'd love that. Was it Come Diamond Me, the RPG?
No, it was like a fantasy-style thing, but you cooked in order to kind of progress through the game, or to level your character up. I can't remember the name of it. I will have to go and search it out. But it was a really interesting thing, and you were cooking actual food, so it wasn't like you were just cooking something and then chucking it in the bin. It was just a fun way of kind of turning practicing cooking into a game.
Matt, do you know what this is leading me to? This is leading me to making Great British Bake Off the RPG.
That's got to exist somewhere out there, right?
Well, if it doesn't, hands off. This is my dream. You make it.
There is one by Sunken Rust. I read it as Sunken Crust, of course. Called Ready Set Bake.
That would make more sense.
Yeah. Ready Set Bake. It's called.
Yeah, but I'll get the license.
Itch.io.
The license.
Itch.io.
Yeah, I'll get the license to the Great British Bake Off, and I'll make an RPG, and then I'll play it with Sue and Mel.
I like that. See, Meehan's been very clever about this now, because she has managed to plug a project, but she's not working on the project currently, so she's able to plug it.
Future.
Yeah.
A hypothetical project.
Yeah, so in future, when she's like, I've got something on the side, people will know this is what it is.
Yeah, call me back in 5 years' time.
What do they call it in
I'll be
America
done
again?
with it. Yeah,
It's called something. It's not the Great British Bake Off. It's called something else. Which
What?
I think it's called. There is because every time American friends mention it,
The Great
it's by a
American
completely
Baking
different
Show.
name. That's it. Or the British Baking Show. So.
Oh right.
Yeah, it was highly confusing, but they don't have Ready Steady Cook, from my understanding.
What?
The creme de la creme of
They don't have Ready Steady Cook.
British cooking shows.
Oh come on.
Red tomatoes and green peppers.
Yeah. Represent red. Lolies, are you a red tomato or a green pepper? No idea.
It's fine. We
Matt,
can move on. It's
Matt,
great. Ainsley Harriott continues to be just fantastic across the board.
Ainsley Harriott releases some excellent couscous.
Yeah, it really does.
Did you
Yeah.
say
He really
releases
does.
some excellent couscous?
There is
Yeah.
Ainsley Harriott branded couscous, and it is
there
it's
is.
genuinely fantastic. It's
and
what I
he's-
sustained myself on through most of university.
Yeah, he cares about culinary delights.
Hmm.
Brendan
He's
is
very
weird.
passionate about it. And does couscous. So there you go. Enough about that rubbish.
Enough
Speaking
about
of couscous,
we're running.
couscous to coyote and crows. I don't know. I'm trying to make it work.
We're running a little long on you, so I'm just gonna give this one a plug and let folks seek it out for themselves. But Jace wrote a really interesting piece on Coyote and Crow, which is an RPG led by an indigenous team, which is basically much of the premise of the RPG is to work against the very westernized, kind of like colonized approach to role-playing games that kind of underlies a lot of things through violence and kind of the seeking out of violence. But the team led by, say, indigenous designers and artists and other creators have been working to create an RPG that isn't that does work on a kind of... I think it's powered by a similar system to World of Darkness, but the tone of it is much more about discussing things and solving problems through something that isn't violence, essentially. I'm probably doing a bad job of summing that up because I thought we'd have more time to go through it, but you should seek out the piece on the Dicebreaker website. It's really good.
I love how earlier we're like, quick, come on, let's fill
We need to fill this time.
And then, of course...
Yeah, I'm not doing a good job of this. I'm not putting this across very well, but it is a fantastic piece. It sounds like an interesting project, so you should go and read that piece.
Yeah, just go and read the article.
Just do it.
As a very quick other mention, at the very tail of the news section, there's a free mini expansion for Small World that adds co-op and solo play.
Yeah.
Which you wrote a piece about me in. And you can find the link on our website, but you can also just go to Days of Wonder. It's just like a free PDF, right? You just need to own the base game, I think.
You can use Small World or Small World, is it Underground?
Underworld, maybe.
Underworld, that's the one. You can use it with either of those, and it just provides a solo or co-op campaign for you to play against, and it's free, so you can do that.
That's been another trend. We saw a lot of that last year, I think, as lockdown was
Days
kind
of Wonder particularly have
kicking
been doing a lot of that. They've just been releasing free stuff for people to play and use, which is nice.
Yeah, the fact
Good
it's all
on
free
you.
is it's nice. It's just variant rule sets for one or two people.
Yeah, good on you, Days of Wonder.
Yeah, cheers, Days of Wonder.
You go, Days of Wonder.
Okay, let's move on to emails.
Email.
If you've got an email, I pause naturally now for for the email alarm. If
It
you've
is,
got an
yeah,
email,
to get a
Email
klaxon.
alarm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
email.
we need to get a soundboard. Don't put me in charge of the soundboard, because you'll be in trouble now.
You're like a living soundboard, Meehan. We have no need for.
That's how I communicate. I just
Anyway,
use horns and fart noises.
if you've got an email for the Dicebreaker podcast, you can email us at podcast@dicebreaker.com. You can tweet at us at Join Dicebreaker, or just go over to the website and drop it in the comments there.
Yeah.
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 Alex, Lolies, would you like to read this one for Alkogod, please?
I would love to. Alkogod says, "Hi, Dicebreaker. My friend's wife has had a hard time during lockdown keeping herself social, especially considering she has also had a second child during the pandemic. She does, however, enjoy board games, although she only really knows the mainstream ones like the one we should not mention, Monopoly, Mousetrap, etc. I thought it would be best people to ask for advice on other board games I can recommend and play with my friend, her husband, and his wife to help her during these rough times. She enjoys crime dramas and mysteries in her books, TV shows, but my friend has tried a bit of tabletop role-playing and she finds it stressful. So I think board gaming is more her style. If you can be of any help, I would be eternally grateful. Love, Alkogod."
Thanks for your question, and congratulations to your friend on their new arrival. Or
Yeah,
newish
yeah.
arrival at this point.
Congrats.
I can jump in here with a
Go,
with one
Matt.
while you're thinking.
Go,
So,
Matt.
if you're into mysteries, or if your friend's wife even is into mysteries, but tabletop role playing proper is a bit full on, I think Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective is a good way to split the difference. Because it's essentially like a choose your own adventure kind of game book, in that you pick a place to go. The text is there for you, so you don't have to improvise. There's none of the pressure of kind of coming up with the dialogue yourself. But it is an open-ended mystery. The mysteries are often like quite satisfying. They are quite tricky. It's known as insulting detective among a lot of people, because you get to the end and Sherlock basically tells you that you got everything wrong. But the
He
mysteries,
drags you.
like the writing, particularly, I know that Wheels really likes Baker Street Irregulars for the writing. The writing is generally very strong. It is basically like a living book that you can play. I think it works especially well with kind of 2 or 3 people tops. I think any kind of bigger groups than that, it loses its kind of. It basically just becomes a book that you're passing around.
Yeah,
So it's a little harder to
much.
follow. But Consulting Detective is really great. I think there are normally like 10 cases in each set, and there are a number of sets at this point. There is the one that is inspired by Jack the Ripper, which are obviously real cases, so you may wish to avoid that, depending on your own feelings about that. But everything else, I don't think there are any that are based on actual Sherlock Holmes stories. So even if the person you're looking for games in this case has read Sherlock Holmes, there shouldn't be any spoilers, because I believe that they are all original cases. But like I say, it's very much about the mystery. It is very story driven. There's the potential to do kind of voices for characters if you want to have a little bit of role playing, but you don't have to. You can just read it out like it's a book. It's a great series.
Yeah. You might solve a mystery.
Oh,
Or even rewrite a little bit of history.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I can resist.
Is that DuckTales?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
DuckTales. Yeah, I've not played a lot of mystery games or games like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, so I can't really help you out with that too much, but I know that Johnny has recommended Detective, a modern crime board game, which again deals with mysteries, and it's a co-op game, so there's no stress involved with, oh, I've got to compete with this other person. You can work together as a group. I've heard Johnny seem to really enjoy it, and a lot of other people seem to really like that game. I think he enjoyed Season 1 as well. What's it called? What's the long, stupid name?
I think it's just called Detective and Modern Crime Board Game Season 1.
It's just called
The
that.
original
yeah.
was just called Detective and Modern Crime Board Game, which was long enough as it was.
Yeah, no, you've got to add more stuff to it. So yeah, Season 1 I think is actually meant to be a more approachable version of the original as well. So that could be a good place to start with. And I know that obviously that's more recent game, so it might be easier to get a hold of it. And also, I think escape room games are really coming into fashion now as well. I think you've played a few of the Exit series.
Yeah, I've played a couple of Exit games.
And Lolies. Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely recommend Exit games. They've got some good ones. I think I've played like 2 or 3, and they had like varying difficulty levels, which is quite good. It tells you on the front like approximately how complex it'll be. But I've really enjoyed them every time. I actually prefer them to real escape room games, because they last longer and they're a lot cheaper. And I feel like I mean, I don't know, with real escape rooms I sometimes feel like I don't really get a chance to do what I want to do, whereas you can kind of take as long as you want with the escape room games in a box. I've only played Exit games. I don't think I've played any other ones, but I know people
There's
like
Unlock.
what's the ones? There's some other ones that are really popular.
Yeah, there's the Unlock series that seems to be quite.
Yeah.
It depends.
That uses an app, right? I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's Cosmos. It uses an app to kind of time you, but also you can enter in like
Exit is Cosmos.
Yeah.
Are they both Cosmos?
No, Unlock is Space Cowboys.
Oops. Yeah, Unlock is Space Cowboys. Yeah, and there is an app that you can use that kind of enter in information to get clues and stuff like that, which is fun. I'm all in favour of apps. Most of the time they do a really good job of complementing the game. And I think that one, when it comes to Unlock, it very much depends on the game you get, because there are a lot in the series and they kind of vary in terms of the themes and quality from what I've heard. So there's a Star Wars one if you like Star Wars.
Yeah, the Star Wars one's decent.
If your friend likes the Star Wars one, I think you played that one, yeah.
Yeah, and the benefit with those, I think, I actually prefer the Exit series, but they're kind of one and done experiences because at points you're cutting stuff up. Which ones have you played, by the way, Lolies? Because I've only played a couple, so but I really like them. So
I'll have a quick look because I wouldn't know off the top of my head.
Because there's like the Egyptian tomb one. There's the abandoned station. There's I think the best one I've played is the Murder on the Orient Express.
I played that one. Yeah, I played
really strong.
One that was in a sorry, this one is in German for some reason. It's in a what's the laboratory. I remember. I think that was the first one I played. I think that was gifted that. Because before that I had no interest. I was like, I don't like escape rooms. I have no interest. And then I got gifted one for Christmas, and I played it, and I was like, this is great. Yeah. So I played those two, and then there was like a bigger one. What was it? It was like, did I have a lion or something on it? Or something else? I'll look it up because I really can't remember. But
there are a lot of them out there, so you can just pick one that you feel like, oh, I'm excited about this concept. There's like a Spooks, or there's a Agatha Christie train, or there's like Lonely said, a laboratory.
Yeah, so I played the Catacombs of Horror as well.
Oh, I haven't played that one.
Which is a slightly bigger one. The funny thing is I don't really remember anything about any of them, so I reckon I probably could go back and play them again and be fine, because I'm looking at them now and I'm like, I can't tell you what happens in this at all. That was an expert level one, it says on the box, so I think I struggled with that like a little bit more than I did with maybe the other ones. But yeah, I liked all of them. I like even the one which was harder. It just means that like your score is a little bit worse at the end if you pick one that's maybe a little bit too hard for you.
I think they do quite a good job with the hint card. It's the hint cards in Exit, isn't it?
I think they have.
So
hint
if you do
cards,
get stuck, it's not like you just have to give it up.
Yeah.
They do have kind of built-in little hints.
Yeah, and like if you use the hints, you like obviously lose some points, but then also I think if you go over a certain amount of time, you lose points. So it's like, which one do you want to do? At some point, at least.
Yeah, but hopefully between those, one of those will fit the bill.
Also Mysterium, it's kind of like a different mystery, but that's like a really nice simple one that you can get into, and that plays with more people as well. So even like once the lockdown lifts, if you want to get more people involved, that plays like up to 7, is it?
Yeah, I think it is something like that.
7. Yeah, and I think 3. I think it's the same with 3 as with fewer, right? Like it won't really make a huge difference.
Yeah, because everyone has their own clues, right? So it scales quite nicely. Yeah, that's a great shout. Yeah, thank you for your question. Alex Meehan, would you like to read this one from Connor Watson, please?
Yeah, I can do that. Connor says, "Hi, DB team. I've been doing a research and building characters for Blades in the Dark. I'll be running a campaign soon, and I noticed in most of the games I've run online or in podcasts, there are playbooks that seem to be skipped over, like the Hound, for example. Are there any other classes or archetypes that you see as underutilized or avoided in other systems? Thank you for all the coverage and content." Thank you for your question,
Yeah,
Connor.
thank you, Connor.
Underutilized classes. I mean, the thing is, I don't play an RPG often enough to kind of like immediately go, "Oh, I think this class is not used enough." But I don't know. I know I've had arguments with people about bards before, because I think bards get a bad rap in D&D 5e, because people are like, "Oh, they're just useless in battle," and I'm like, "You just don't." Yet the point is that bards are better outside of battle, and I like that anyway. So, you know, I find combat, especially in D&D 5e, kind of boring. So I find, especially if you're playing a bard, you have to think outside of the box during combat anyway. Because
Like you sleep
don't just...
all the time.
Yeah.
Top tip.
Sleep all
From
the time.
one bard to you. That's my top tip. Send them
You
all to
just
sleep.
sleep all the time.
Send them to sleep.
No, I've played bards in the past, and they can kind of be varied in terms of a support role, or just use whatever wacky stuff you can get hold of to get by, but they're often a lot more useful outside of combat anyway. I also think sorcerers get a bad rap, because people just say they're rubbish, like spellcasters. I think that's very unfair, because they're just more specialised, that's all.
I think at the end of the day,
fun.
having some characters that are not as good at everything or at certain things as
Yeah.
others makes it great and more realistic, if anything, because it's like not everyone is good at the same things as each other, and it's kind of fun to like. We've got are you a warlock, Morbid? What are you again? I always forget.
I'm a cleric.
You're a cleric.
He's a cleric.
Having a
Not that you
cleric,
could tell it.
having a cleric who's got like minus whatever wisdom, is like hilarious.
He's got
And,
9
like,
in his wisdom. He's got 9.
Oh, but
No,
it's like -1 is the thing.
Yeah, his modifier is -1, yeah.
I think things like that are great. So, you know.
I think it causes a lot of hilarity.
It does.
I think people, when it comes to role-playing games, depending on the system, sometimes take things as are more concerned with optimizing, you know, creating the characters and stuff like that, than rather creating a character that's fun and interesting to play. And sometimes it's totally viable to create a character that is kind of rubbish at stuff just to make for an interesting narrative. Astrid did a feature on the website entirely based around this, and like the fun that you can have by doing something like that. I would say, like, for example, in Deadlands, I'm playing a campaign of Deadlands, and pretty much every other character is what's called a huckster in this world, which is basically a magic caster. And sometimes it can feel a little bit like, oh, I'm basically, from what I remember, I'm basically a sharpshooter kind of character. Like, I just use equipment and I'm more reliant on skills and things. And sometimes it can feel a little bit like, especially when you're leveling up, oh, people are getting access to these cool new spells and things. But the important thing to remember is, like, number one, I get access to more skills, which is also useful, just in a different context. But number two, like, I specifically have my character built around, like, this is who they are, and they're not a huckster, like, and that really works in our group, dynamic, and it creates for some interesting and fun scenarios. So I think when it comes to certain classes and, certain character builds, it's more important to think about what do they bring to the character as a whole in terms of their personality, but also what do they bring to the group? Like, how can you have fun with this? So there you go. What about you two?
I did have loads to add on top of what you both said. I think, like, you're both right that Sometimes I think it's the fault of older games, particularly D&D. They've spun out of the likes of wargaming, which are very combat focused. Obviously, we were mentioning Coyote and Crow just earlier, where the focus is on something other than solving issues with violence. And I think a lot of those games they're not built to allow for that as a default. A lot of them, the default answer is hit it with a sword or set it on fire or do something that involves using very kind of like offensive attacks. So I think games that encourage a more kind of not completely conversational, because sometimes I find those games are a little open-ended and they become more like storytelling games, but that have a structure in place to allow you to do something other than attack. I think actually Monster of the Week and Blaze in the Dark are both good systems for those kind of things. I think particularly Monster of the Week, the moves that you get, because it's powered by the Apocalypse, they are often built around things that aren't just attacks. In the Monster of the Week campaign that I was playing, one of the skills I could pick up was that I could basically tell when people were lying, which changes the dynamic of conversing with NPCs in a really interesting way that means that you don't always have to, fight things. I think Monster of the Week also does a good job where you gain experience when you fail a roll, which is a more kind of... It makes failure interesting, basically. So it doesn't just feel like you swung a sword at someone and missed. It kind of adds to your storytelling, and your character develops through the things that they don't do and can't do, as well as the things that they can do successfully. So I think that's the thing, is like, sometimes it comes down to character, but a lot of the time there are just certain games that you have to bend and break more than others to go beyond hit it with a sword as a kind of default position.
And especially, I'd say, a game like Blaze in the Dark is probably, like I said, one of the better examples, because it's more a game about, like, heists and, pulling off jobs and things like that, and those don't ever have to even necessarily include combat. Like, if you play a character that's designed to deceive or stealth or things like that, the ideal situation is that you don't get into combat. So I think, systems that aren't entirely built around you're going to get into a fight, I think are, definitely help alleviate that, this class is inherently not as good as the others.
I think,
what about you, Lolies?
I think when you're like, I obviously, again, don't have like a huge amount of experience in RPGs. Like a lot of the RPGs I will have played in recent years will have been through work, and in that case usually we play like a couple of sessions and then that's kind of done. So I don't really get to know a lot of the classes, and obviously I wouldn't know what's underutilized because we play what we play and then that's that. D&D is the one that I'd kind of be most familiar with, and I know, for example, in D&D there's definitely classes and races that are avoided because D&D is ultimately an old system that has some problematic elements to it, and so there are certain like classes or races that are avoided because of the kind of problematic nature of what they are and what they are like potentially represent, and things like that. So I think it's probably, I don't know if that's a thing with newer games, like you're talking obviously in terms of Blades in the Dark, Connor. I didn't realize that the Hound is not used a lot. I don't know why. I don't know anything about that. But I know, like, for example, in D&D, that would be like one of the reasons why. I think there's obviously always going to be classes and races that are just happen to be more popular because they seem more fun to play as well. Just from like what you see in a book, and people will obviously like lean more towards certain types of characters. So like Meehan, I know Meehan likes to play characters that talk like that kind of I was gonna say talk a lot, but that sounds like I'm being really shady. Like your character in Blades of the Dark is like a character who like very much uses like his like talks to try and get out of situations, and that's what I'm trying to say, rather than like talks a lot. You know what I'm trying to say. Whereas like I know for me, I really like being able to be stealthy and kind of dark, and like I feel like Johnny often plays like kind of gruff fellers. I don't know.
Rough fellas. The class.
I just feel like, everyone's kind of got something that, like, yeah, I'm sure everyone, like, we play different things all the time, but there's definitely things that I think you kind of tend to lean towards more so than others. Things that, like, you kind of favor slightly above other classes and races. So, and especially if you're talking in terms of, like, podcasts and stuff, I guess, depending on the podcast and, or the video series or whatever it might be, I guess tends to be a certain kind of person who does that kind of thing. So maybe that's why they're kind of leaning towards the same kind of classes and races, because they can, certain kind of personalities sometimes lean towards that. That's what I have to say about that.
Right. Thanks for your question. We'll end on a very quick one from Twitter user Keenus_10. Which may be a non-starter, because I haven't, but they ask, what's the best die you've ever broken? Which is, I think, a question we've certainly been sent before, but I'm not sure we've ever answered. I don't know if I've ever broken a die.
I have.
Have you?
Yes. And I'm about to plug another video of ours. It's a canned D&D die that I made out of candy. Yeah, I think I did eat one of them. So I guess that's technically broken, right?
Yeah,
as long as you're
absolutely
eating candy
yeah.
and not.
So if you want to
die.
find out how to make your own canned D&D dice, you can check out my Dicebreaker video.
Yeah, do it
on YouTube.
Good goodness sake, do it!
Do it for God's sake!
I
While
know.
you're there, watch all the others. They're great.
I know my flatmate broke a D4.
How?
I don't know. She was
Surely triangle the strongest shape.
Yeah,
It must be the hardest to break.
I think we were playing Deadland actually, and they suddenly stopped and like held up their D4, and like a chip of it up the top had broken off. I don't know what they've been doing to it. But hey, that's a hazard.
I can't believe we're
told
calling
them to-
ourselves dice breakers and nobody has broken
not
any
breaking
dice.
any dice.
In fairness, now that I think about it, it wasn't me, but I once reviewed a game and it had maybe the worst dice I've ever used. I think it was a roll and write game. It was very clear that they had not put a lot of production budget into the dice.
Right.
And it arrived and they were like, a lot of the pips weren't visible. I think several of the dice were kind of like chipped or had scuffed the edges off, I guess, in transit.
Oh wow.
And it was a real bad, because dice, by and large, dice are
pretty
easy
sturdy,
and
right?
cheap to manufacture. Yeah, and are relatively cheap to manufacture at a level where, you know what a normal dice looks like, or a normal die looks like. You know, you can get to a standard quality level of dice without having to blow the budget on anything too fancy.
Yeah.
But these were shocking. They were really bad.
I feel like if your dice are breaking, they're low quality. That's the only thing I can imagine. Either that, or you're like deliberately trying to destroy. Like,
And
I've never had even plastic dice, break on me. So.
And in a roll and write as well. There are two key ingredients in a roll and write: the pad that you write on and the dice
and the dice that you roll.
So to have the dice be so bad was it wasn't a great game either, but it was a pretty shocking.
Heavy burns coming out here from that.
Like, I'm not naming the game because part of me can't remember it. It was a couple of years ago, but it was bad. But like I say, I don't think I've never broken a die otherwise. I've broken a lot of miniatures and I've broken other components and spilt things on cards and.
Oh yeah, we've all done that.
Dice generally are the cockroaches of the board game industry.
Yeah, they survive.
Yeah.
We've all spilt a drink on a load of cards before. I've done that several times. And you always hope it's a game that you own. So you don't have to apologise. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for your question.
Yeah, thank you. And with that, we will draw this week's Dicebreaker podcast to a close. It's worth saying, we kind of mentioned it up the front of the podcast. He's not here with us, but this is Johnny's last week at Dicebreaker. It will have been his last week by the time this goes up.
Yeah,
his last day will have been Thursday.
He's flown the coop.
Yeah.
And if you missed it, we did a live stream with him yesterday. I'm saying that as if we already did it, but it will be his last painting stream with us, and we're all joining him for some good old-fashioned painting.
Yeah. And we've got a piece up on the website, just kind of like celebrating what Johnny's brought to Dicebreaker, because we love him very much. And we'll be sad to see him go, but excited to see what comes next for him and what comes next for us, because we are hiring. So if you're interested in being another face on this podcast and making,
I need to see your face.
I love that you said face on this podcast. Yeah.
okay, or voice, or if you want to be part of Team Dicebreaker, we're hiring. So head on over to the website. But yeah, we'll miss you, Johnny. I'm almost certain it won't be the last time we see Johnny on some sort of Dicebreaker video. He'll pop up here.
Yeah,
no,
you'll always be welcome.
He's like a bad rash. We can't get rid of him.
That's the good send off. We've got a couple more Dungeon Breaker episodes as well, so there will be a little bit more Johnny, even in the short term. But yeah, thanks Johnny for everything.
Yeah, thanks. We'll whisper your name in the wind.
Yeah, and then he will appear.
Yeah,
you'll hear the distant sound of interesting facts about medieval literature.
He's like shadow facts. Like
you whistle into the wind and
gallops in.
But outside of Johnny's farewell stream, Alex Lolies.
Yes.
Grasping Honey, who turns by the time this podcast goes up, Honey will have had a birthday.
Yeah,
what a big week for
16th
Honey.
birthday.
No,
look at her.
That
she
cat.
looks terrified. Anyway,
she's like,
you were going to ask me what else is happening on the
what's
video.
coming up on youtube.com/Dicebreaker.
Yeah.
Yes.
For once, I'm actually ready for this. I can tell you that on Wednesday, which is Honey's birthday, by the way, we will have put up a video of today we played with Meehan and myself. We had a little look at a preview, I should say, at a game by the maker of Cosmic Frog. So you should check that out, because we'll be sharing our thoughts with you in that little video, or we will have done on Wednesday. Thursday, as I said, will have been the painting stream. Tomorrow is episode 2 of Dungeon Breaker, so join us for that at approximately 3 p.m. GMT. Some of us may or may not be in the chat. Last week I was by myself, just saying.
Hey, I'm in there relatively often.
Yeah, we're not always going to be there, all of us. But anyway, and on Sunday, myself and Wheels will have filmed a Let's Play. It's currently between 2 games, so I'm not going to say which one it is. But we'll have done actually a Let's Play of one of these 2 games. So check it out to find out which game it is.
Yeah, because Wills is off today for his birthday. So happy birthday, Wills, as well. A week of birthdays and
all of the best birthdays, but especially Honey.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, over on Dicebreaker.com, of course, we have our daily news, courtesy of Meehan, myself, and Chase, our wonderful news writer. We have a feature up this week by Isabel Lichtenstein about how D&D provides a safe space for members of the LGBTQ plus community. Meehan, I think we plugged it last week, but your Chroma preview went up this week. Which sounds like an interesting, if maybe not interesting enough, board game. It sounds like a cool concept that maybe isn't the kind of thing you want to invest a load of money into.
Yeah, it's all right. It just doesn't have a lot of what's the word? Investment value in terms of once you've played it a few times, you've kind of got the gist of how it goes. So but there you go.
It's a really interesting preview. It kind of gave me a good idea of that game, so I would go and check that out. I forgot to mention this last week, so I'm going to give it a plug here. Chase wrote up a really really good summary of a not good event involving the Perfect RPG on Kickstarter and the involvement of a designer, which then led to the project being cancelled. And various designers coming out and saying they were not aware of this particular designer being involved. it's quite a lot to get into on the podcast, so I'd go and read Chase's fantastic summary,
read
which
it.
I forgot to mention last week
Do
because
it.
we were running short on time. Then
Just do it.
I'll also say we mentioned Matt Thrower earlier in the podcast, but Matt Thrower won the Good Games Writing Award for Best Tabletop Coverage.
Yay, Matt! Well done.
For his piece, which went up last year, so I'm just mentioning it now with this fantastic achievement. It was on how friendly local game stores are coping during the coronavirus pandemic. It's a heck of a piece. Award-winning, you might say.
Yes.
So absolutely go and read it if you have not read it yet.
Just do it.
But we will have a lot more coming up on Dicebreaker.com.
Why won't you do it?
And youtube.com/Dicebreaker. We will be back next Friday with the Dicebreaker podcast once again. But until then, thank you, Alex Lolies.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Alex Meehan.
Ducktail! Woo!
I've been Matt Jarvis. Thank you for listening. Stay safe out there. Look after yourselves. And until we meet again, have a lovely day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.